Hey folks, here at OS Review. So you're watching our video review of the U8 Plus smartwatch. This is the updated version of the extremely popular U8, which we saw a few months ago, and it's one of the least expensive Bluetooth smartwatches currently on the market, which sells for under $20, and you can find it directly on Amazon.com. The packaging for the most part looks fairly professional, and the watch also comes in either black or white iterations. It features, again, Bluetooth, there's a barometer, there isn't a heart rate sensor, however it does track your sleep as well as your steps, and some basic things in the box include a micro USB for charging and syncing. Takes about 2 hours to completely charge, which is pretty good. The size of the smartwatch isn't too large either. You also have access to a tool which allows you to remove the back cover and access the swappable battery, which is a pretty good feature. It's not built in, and so if it ever dies, you can swap it out. There's also a user manual printed in both Chinese and English. It's pretty fully documented. There is a QR code that you need to use to scan and download a proprietary application on your phone. It isn't like the most intuitive application we've seen, but it does work fairly well. Some diagramming as well on the back. And that's basically it as far as extra accessories and contents are concerned. So other things about this particular watch, it also acts as a notification tool, so you can check whenever you have new incoming texts, you have any calls, any notifications from WeChat or Skype or QQ. It also acts as a remote camera tool, and there's a few built-in applications. It supports any Android device with 2.3 and above, and again, the built-in UI is also pretty intuitive. You can see here we have a main screen being just a clock. On the left hand side there is aforementioned finish and the VCall logo, and on the right there is a power on off switch, which is pretty tactile, responsive, and risen above the surface. The watch, however, is crafted mainly out of a glossy plastic material, which does attract a fair amount of fingerprints as well as scratches over time. There is a cover, again covering the micro USB port, which is pretty nice. It prevents any water from coming in, even though this is not fully waterproof, so you can't take it when showering or if you're going for a swim. The band on here, it's pretty comfortable, it's pretty large as well. This watch is definitely not the smallest smartwatch we've seen, but the size is pretty comparable to other products on the market, such as the Apple Watch, so it's not too big on either. As far as design is concerned, there are 3 capacitive keys on the bottom, which is quite reminiscent of some Android Wear devices, even though this is definitely not running on Android. You can see that pressing on the main screen for a few seconds takes you to the dialer, so if you're connected to your phone, you can pretty easily input any numbers and quickly dial one and call somebody. The keys are pretty responsive because this is using a capacitive touchscreen as opposed to a pressure-sensitive resistive screen. Everything feels pretty smooth, and there isn't too much stutter or lag, which is a nice element. So here's a Pedometer app, which allows you to track your number of steps you've taken throughout the day, and then you can easily track it and check out more information regarding that. It also is pretty accurate in the sense it's not going to accidentally track your steps if you just shake it, so it does have a fairly decent sensor on board for this. There's also access to some basic features like Bluetooth, which allows you to connect to your phone, visibility options, you can connect to My Device. There is kinetic scrolling on the screen, so you can scroll up and down quite easily, check out what your name is when you're connecting to another device. A very basic stopwatch. The design of the UI on some places could use some refinement because it seems a little bit jumpy, but overall it's not bad, again for only a sub $20 smartwatch. You have access to the main dialer pad, which we saw. There's also a messaging client, which you can see your sent messages in your inbox, but this is fairly basic. There also isn't a full QWERTY keyboard on board, so you can't really easily text or input any messages. There's also a Bluetooth music app, which allows you to control music stored on your phone, and then you can play that back and use the watch as a remote, and that works fairly nicely as well. There's a small mono speaker on the watch, so it does provide a bit of sound if you're using it for an alarm purposes. It also acts kind of like a very small Bluetooth speaker, which is fairly cool as well. There's also a calendar, which allows you to track some basic notifications, and you can drag it around to check out any important dates you might set on a calendar. Other basic applications include a calculator, which works pretty well. The icons are a little small, so it's not the easiest to access all the functions, but it works decently. There's also a sleep tracking tool on here. You can also check that out in greater detail with the application on the phone. There's also an app which allows you to remind you after you sitting down on a desk, let's say for 30 minutes or an hour to get up, it's going to vibrate slightly or give a light buzz and tell you to move around and exercise a bit. There's also a very basic barometer as well, and also a temperature sensor on board, so you can check out the average room temperature. It works pretty nicely as well. There's also an altimeter for measuring relative heights, so it uses that barometer to get a gauge of 2 different distances and then measure the average height of maybe a building or maybe an object. And that's basically it. There's some setting profiles that you can set through, power saving options, anti-loss. So if you've lost your phone and you're still connected with Bluetooth to the U8 Plus, you can tap on the watch and it can automatically track your phone where it is by creating an alarm on your phone. And once it rings, you can easily locate your phone or vice versa with the U8 watch. And in settings, there are some other quick settings, including a QR code that you can scan in case you lost the user manual to download the app again. Language settings, we have English, there's Spanish, there's Portuguese, there's Dutch, Chinese, and the list really just goes on and on. It's a pretty intuitive and fully functional language list. And there's also a few other watch faces that you can select through. So for instance, you can go through a analog or digital clock. There's also motion sensing on board, so you can flip the watch from your wrist up to your face, and it will automatically turn on for a few seconds for you to check the time, or maybe to reject a call if something is coming in, and that works nicely. The brightness on the screen is decent. This is using a 1.5-inch TFT LCD display, which is a little bit limited in terms of viewing angles. If you see it from a slanted angle, the colors are washed out, but again, you're not watching any videos or photos on this, so you should be fine for the most part. Brightness is decent. You can still see it under direct sunlight, I would say, but if you are in bright sunlight, it's not as easy to see as indoors. So taking a last look at some of the other watch types, which the watch faces, if we set it to the second one, we can see that this is another analog clock that you can set to. I personally think this is a pretty classy option to go with as opposed to a digital one, but there's also some digital options and also a few other designs which allows access to easy controls on the bottom to the menu, to the Bluetooth connection, and also to ringtones. So if you like this one, it also shows the battery status in the top right hand corner. And finally, we're going to check out another watch face. Digital number 2 is just a very simple digital face without the icons on the bottom. Also a pretty clean look. Unfortunately, there is no way to access more watch faces, so compared to some other smartwatches out there, you are slightly more limited in that department. But overall, the U8 Plus seems to be a pretty decent smartwatch for sub $20. It acts as a nice companion tool, even though I personally think that smartwatches still has some way to go before being fully baked. This is a decent budget option for you to get a first look at how smartwatches operate in 2015 and 2016 before you invest in a more expensive model. And some of the main features are here, even though of course the craftsmanship and the overall integration with the application on your phone isn't as great as some more expensive options out there. However, it is a decent budget-oriented smartwatch that is certainly slightly better than the original U8. To check out more information about the U8 Plus smartwatch offered by VCall, please read our full written review. This has been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews.